Hi, Dave. Welcome to Duologue.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
What do you think of yourself? Who's David Cameron? I mean, obviously, we know how we get reflected by outside people, the audience, etc. But who do you think you are?
Well, I always describe myself as a modern, compassionate conservative. Modern because conservatives shouldn't be just about conserving what we have. We have to be looking forward, addressing modern challenges. Compassionate because my political philosophy is about helping everyone, particularly those who are left behind, who don't have the best life chances. But conservative because I think there are great things about our countries, whether we're in India or in the United Kingdom, that we should, institutions and things that we should want to promote and to keep. And using conservative methods, choice, competition, openness, these are things. So that's the sort of conservative I am. And I remain. Obviously, it's been more challenging, I think, in the Donald Trump populist world that we live in to hold by those values and that political approach. But I think it's more necessary than ever.
You are an Indophile. That's what we would like to think.
Very much so. I mean, when I became leader of the Conservative Party back in 2005, the first big country outside Europe I visited was India as leader of the opposition. And when I became Prime Minister in 2010, the first big country I visited outside Europe was again India. I came back and back and back because I'm a big believer in this partnership. I think there are so many things that Britain and India can do together. And I'm very pleased that my successors, first Theresa May and now Boris Johnson, they set great store by the Britain-India relationship too.
Absolutely. And India, as we say, it's not one country. It has many countries in one country, the diversity. I come from eastern part of India, a state called Bengal. And I remember in 2013, when you came to Bengal, there's a road called Kamak Street in Kolkata. You got down from the car and had vada from a street side vendor.
That's right. It was, I think, in Kamak Street. I was on my way to see the Chief Minister, and I wanted to experience the Indian street food. And so I think it was called Victoria Vada, and the seller was named their stall after Queen Victoria.
Yeah.
But I remember it, and apparently the 30 rupees I spent, they've kept that money as a souvenir.
So you took out 30 rupees and gave it to him.
I did, that's right.
Brilliant. You know, when you talk about India, obviously you have a special space in Indians' mind. One of the incidences which remained there in our memory as a sore point, that Jallianwala Bagh incident. And we were thoroughly pleased and touched when you, as the first British Prime Minister, openly apologized for it. When did actually it occur to you that maybe the Brits owe an apology to Indians for that incident?
Well, I think it's something we've all grown up knowing about, not least because of the way that it's been explained to generations like mine in films and television. I think I would put a particular credit with the Indian diaspora community in the United Kingdom, who explained to me how much it's still an issue and how it needed to be addressed. And it was a great honor as a British Prime Minister to go to Amritsar and to see the beauties of the temple.
Absolutely.
And the incredibly, this extraordinary, tranquil and wonderful place. And I was very keen that the Britain-India relationship needs to be a relationship about the future, about our people now, our challenges today. And in order to do that, sometimes there are things in our past we have to confront and talk about and acknowledge. And I think that's what I was trying to do.
Absolutely. You know why it stood out? Because, people make mistakes, nations make mistakes, but it only requires a big heart to actually spell out the mistakes and acknowledge and own up the mistakes and say sorry. So that's why I think you stand out there completely. And, in your memoir, you talked about that with India, the kind of partnership that you would like to forge, or the Britain should forge with India, is about modern partnership not tinged with colonial guilt.
Well, I think that's right, because look, of course, we shouldn't deny our past and we shouldn't acknowledge the things that happened, both good and bad. We should be frank about that. But I think it would be a pity if the relationship between these two great countries was held back. And that's because there are so many things we need to deal with in the future. I mean, if you look at the world today, there are some huge challenges. How do we grow prosperous economies? How do we make sure we tackle the challenge of climate change? And as the world's oldest democracy and as the world's biggest democracy, how do we make sure that our democracies prevail and they succeed in a world where there is autocracy and challenges from people who don't have our values. And so it seems to me this is a thoroughly modern partnership with great interest for both. And we shouldn't be held back by the past. We need to not forget about it, but focus on the things for the future.
Yeah,
and that's what my premiership with respect to India, I think, was all about.
I believe the role that past should play in all our lives is that you take the lesson from it and make the corrections for future. So that's what the past should come for any use. But I think one of the things, if one small thing can be done, I think it will help us forget the past quicker. On a lighter side, that if you return the Kohinoor.
Well, that's not something I'm getting into today, particularly with everything that's been happening back in the UK. But look, there'll always be issues of the past that will come up.
Always be. Memories always stays. But one should not spend or dwell much on the memory.
I mean, one of the things I found was that the Indian diaspora in Britain were an enormous spur to making this relationship work, because there are so many people in India who are making of Indian origin, are making an extraordinary contribution to the British economy and British society. But they also have these great links back to India. And I think making the most of that, we'd be crazy not to make the most of that.
Yes. In fact, I was scanning through your video, the Wembley speech, I think in 2015. Yeah. You spoke very highly of Indians. And the values that you spoke about, if I could remember it correctly, you talked about responsibility, family, enterprise, and hard work. And you assigned these values to the Indian diaspora, the British Indians who are there.
Namaste, Wembley! With Rishi Sunak, Alok Sharma, Suella Fernandez in Parliament, with Shailesh Vara in the Ministry of Justice, and with Priti Patel sat at my cabinet table, I know one thing. It won't be long till there is a British Indian Prime Minister in Downing Street.
I mean, they make a huge contribution. I mean, there are 1.6 million people of Indian origin in Britain. It felt like most of them were in Wembley that night with Prime Minister Modi.
Yeah.
I mean, normally in Britain, we are lucky if we speak to an audience of 500, 1,000 people. And there in Wembley Stadium was 60,000 people.
Yeah.
Duologue with Barun Das, featuring David Cameron. Streaming on the world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.